So what you're seeing on the screen right now is gameplay of one of my favorite video games of all time, which is Star Wars Battlefront 1. And I'm obviously not talking about the one that was made by EA. I'm talking about the original one from 2004 that I grew up with as a kid. And for this video, I'm just going to share my favorite memories with that game and why I think that Star Wars Battlefront 1 was that one game that defined my childhood. Out of all the games I ever played or that I ever owned as a kid, Battlefront 1, it was just that one game that I would consistently come back to all the time, and I would never get tired of playing it. I remember my daily routine. Every single day when I was in the first grade, I would come home from school, do my homework, get all that shit done, but as soon as I was finished with that, I would go on my PS2 and play Battlefront 1 all night long, or at least until it was my bedtime. I think back then my bedtime was like 9 o'clock, 9:30, so, I had to go to bed because I was 6 years old and I couldn't really do anything about that. But for as long as I could, I would play Battlefront 1 every single day. 7 days a week. I never got bored with Battlefront 1. It was so exciting. It was the most immersive gaming experience I'd ever had at that point. Like, there were a lot of games that I loved as a kid, like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, because SpongeBob was my favorite TV show, so being able to actually play as SpongeBob and see the entire world of SpongeBob in a video game format, I thought that was really cool. But Star Wars Battlefront was just on a whole different level for me. I don't even remember if I was a huge Star Wars fan before I played this game. I think Battlefront 1 was what turned me into a Star Wars fan in the first place, kind of like how the wrestling video games turned me into a wrestling fan. It's pretty cool how video games can do that for you. But I just remember as a 6-year-old kid, the first time I played this game, I was blown away at how huge these maps were and how much shit you can do in that game. I never played anything like it before, so I think that might contribute it because I was so young. I was kind of, new to the whole video game thing. I just got my first console, the PS2, probably just a few months before I picked up Battlefront 1, because this was back in 2004. It was my 6th birthday in May 2004 that I got my PlayStation 2 and really got into gaming. So, I never really played a lot of video games prior to that point, or at least no real games. Like, I played those point-and-click games that were made for kids, like Putt Putt Enters the Race, Teletubbies, those games I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't really think that counts as a real gaming experience. But I'm sure that being at such a young age and being very impressionable, that probably had a huge influence on my opinion of the game. Like, I'm sure someone who is as old as I am now, back then in 2004, who has played so many different video games, so many different FPS games, they probably would have a different view of Battlefront 1 just because of how experienced they are. Or, like, how about a 6-year-old kid right now in 2021? They never played an FPS game before, but they're playing Black Ops Cold War. They probably think it's the most amazing game ever because they don't know any better. They never played any games before that, no FPS games. But as someone like me, who has played Call of Duty for like 11, 12 years, I've pretty much seen it all. And Black Ops Cold War just feels like a very average FPS for me. So, that's something that I'm very much aware of. I think, those nostalgia goggles may not give me a clear picture, but I think the general consensus is that Star Wars Battlefront 1 was an amazing FPS game. The map design was great, the weapons, the vehicles, the overall atmosphere of the game really captured what Star Wars is all about. So it was a true Star Wars game. We had so many great Star Wars games back then, but I think Battlefront 1 was the best one, and I still think that to this day. I know a lot of people are going to say that Battlefront 2 is better than 1 because you got the space battles, but I think the overall map design was a little bit better in the first one because they were a lot more open, and I don't know, I just found the maps in Battlefront 1 to be a lot more engaging and more interesting than the maps that we had in Battlefront 2. Not saying that I hate Battlefront 2. Of course I love Battlefront 2 also. I just prefer Battlefront 1 a lot more. The maps in Battlefront 2 are a lot more cramped, they're smaller. They just aren't as fun for me as the maps in Battlefront 1. Like, of the 2 Battlefront games, or actually there are 4 of them now, you have the 2 games from EA, Battlefront 1 is the one that I come back to the most, even 17 years later. And that's despite me probably having more hours logged in to Battlefront 2 overall than Battlefront 1 as a kid, because after a certain amount of time, my PS2 disc got scratched so bad that I couldn't play Battlefront 1 anymore. The PS2, that red error screen that comes up when your disc is fucked up, I couldn't play it anymore. I couldn't even go back to the store and find a brand new copy of it, because at that point, Battlefront 2 was out, so they were only selling Battlefront 2. They didn't sell Battlefront 1 anymore, so I was pretty much stuck with 2. Not that I hated it, I still loved that game, but Battlefront 1 just held a more special place in my heart than Battlefront 2. I will always cherish those memories, playing Galactic Conquest, that awesome music playing in the background while I'm planning which planet to attack next and which booster I'm going to use against the enemy. Should I have a Jedi help me in the battle against the droids, or should I sabotage all the droids' vehicles? It's a really tough decision. And of course, just playing instant action. Just rotating some of my favorite maps, putting them all in one playlist, and just playing that all fucking night long. Good times. So I asked you guys, what was the one game that defined your childhood? Because I feel like we all have that one game. We all have, like, the first game that comes in our head when we think of playing video games as a kid. Like, we all have that one game that holds up above the rest of them. For me, it was Battlefront 1. Let's see what your favorite games were as a kid. PC Fan says, classic Star Wars Battlefront 2. He got it when it released in 2005 for the Xbox. He played Conquest and Galactic Conquest locally with friends and would always talk about the game during school. He would play it locally until late 2009 when he got Xbox Live. Online multiplayer was so much fun on the OG Xbox Live. Even when Xbox Live got shut down in April 2010, he continued to play the game online through System Link XP Connect. And when that got shut down, he played it online through Steam from 2013 to 2014. And then when the GameSpy servers got shut down, he downloaded a third-party mod for multiplayer support and used it until the servers were revived in 2017. Since then, he still plays Battlefront 2 to this very day in 2021, and now he's a part of a competitive league called the Battlefront Competitive League. This game is forever in his heart. Yeah, I actually never played Battlefront online before. I played the EA ones, but I never played the classic games online. I'm kind of intimidated because these people have been playing online for 17 years. I feel like I'm going to get destroyed, even though I played a lot of it over the years. It's a lot different when you're playing with bots. Even if I do it on the highest difficulty, it's not the same. So I'm kind of afraid to go online. I'm still not online yet. I think I'm going to have to do that one day. Because obviously, I had it back in the PS2. You didn't really have online back then. Well, you had it, but you had to buy like a separate adapter. I was 6 years old. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I assumed that I was playing with real people. I didn't even know that I was playing with bots. I was that fucking stupid and naive back then, so I had no idea what the fuck was going on. And it was obviously a lot easier to get online with the original Xbox because you had that online infrastructure that was built up, so I only played Battlefront 1 with bots. Same thing with Battlefront 2. Then we got the neighborino whose favorite game as a child was GTA San Andreas on the PS2. He has fond memories of messing around with cheat codes like flying with cars and using jetpacks along with exploring the amazing map the game had. Easily his favorite GTA and most played game when he was a kid. Yeah, I didn't get into San Andreas until I was I think I was 14 or 15 the first time I played it. So it was many, many years after it came out. I think it was around 2012, 2013. I already played GTA 4. That was my first GTA. Actually, no, I'm lying. It was GTA Liberty City Stories on the PSP. That was my first GTA. So yeah, San Andreas I didn't play until much, much later on. I still loved it. I mean, a good game is a good game no matter what. No matter how much time has passed, you can see a good game. A game is good, regardless of age. It was just so fucking awesome. The map was great. The story was great. The gunplay, that shit is dated, but again, the overall atmosphere, yeah, San Andreas is awesome. I'm sure if I got into that when I was a kid, I may have liked it more than Battlefront 1, who knows? But if someone were to make a list of the 100 greatest video games of all time, San Andreas would have to be on that list. Samurai Edge's favorite game as a child was the original Resident Evil, because it was his first horror game that he played and completed. Well, I'm jealous of your parents, because my parents wouldn't let me play that shit when I was a kid. The first M-rated game I was allowed to play was Modern Warfare 2, and at that point I was already 11 years old. But the crazy thing is, I never played a Resident Evil game before, really. The first game that I had in the Resident Evil series was Operation Raccoon City, and I just wasn't really that into it, so I assumed that I wasn't going to really be into any of the other Resident Evil games, but apparently Operation Raccoon City is just a shit game, so that's probably why I don't like it. I should probably give the other ones a chance. Maybe I'll do that one day. I'm just not really into the whole survival horror aspect anyway, so I don't even know if I'm going to really be a Resident Evil fan. I should probably give it a chance, though. Angry Mobster says that he grew up playing the N64 since it was his first console, but to him, his most memorable gaming experience in his childhood was playing Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets on PS2, PS1. This is a game he goes back to every year during the winter, since it brings back so many memories. The soundtrack is one of the best that he's ever heard in a video game, and the feeling of walking around the castle grounds in the game had an atmosphere unlike any other. I actually never played the Chamber of Secrets. I think the Harry Potter game that I played back in the day on PS2, I think it was A Prisoner of Azkaban. I could be wrong. I think every Harry Potter movie had a video game attached to it. I think that was the one that I played. And I liked it. I thought it was really cool. I also had a Harry Potter game on the PSP. I don't remember which one that was, but I remember not liking that one. And I still haven't seen all the movies yet. I should probably do that before I cancel my HBO Now subscription, or HBO Max, whatever the fuck it's called. Tragai's favorite childhood game is House of the Dead 2. Yeah, I remember that game. That was the game where you, like, hold a gun and you can actually, like, shoot the zombies, right? Yeah, I played that shit so much back then in the arcades. Whenever I go to the arcades, like Chuck E. Cheese or whatever the fuck. I think I also had it on Sega Dreamcast, but it was a lot cooler, like, being in the arcade and holding that plastic gun and having, like, that motion control thing. It was really cool. But I'm gonna read one more comment, because I don't want the video to go on for too long, and it's from D Street 319. His favorite childhood game is Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation 1. He remembers so fondly compared to any other game that he played when he was young. The story, characters, music, it's so memorable. When the remake was announced, he was crying for weeks that it was happening after how many years of waiting, and the game didn't disappoint at all. He still listens to the soundtrack at least once a week, and even at work. But another game that he loved as a child was Metal Gear Solid 1, for the same reasons, but also it helped shape him into the person that he is today. The scene with Gray Fox's death, where he says lines that really motivated him to do what he believes in. Both Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid showed his love, passion, and preferred source of entertainment, that he never looks into any other type of media. Movies, music, nothing. Just video games. That's all he's into because of the impact that Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid had on him. Yeah, that just shows how powerful the medium that video games can really be, especially the fact that you're actually controlling the characters, so you feel more immersed, you feel more invested into what happens in the world, because you feel like you have more of a stake in a video game and what happens to the characters in that than just simply watching a movie or watching a TV show. So I definitely get where you're coming from. I definitely prefer video games over movies and TV shows. I'm not much of a movie person. There are only like 2 or 3 shows that I really care about right now. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. As far as Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy, I didn't really play Metal Gear Solid that much. Not only as a kid, but just in general. The only one that I really played a lot was Metal Gear Solid 4. That was on the PS3. It was a beautiful game. I loved it so much. But I remember getting halfway through Metal Gear Solid 5 a few years ago, and it was a free game, and I'm using heavy air quotes on that because nothing's free with PlayStation Plus, because if you don't pay a subscription, they're not free anymore, right? But it was on PlayStation Plus, so I decided to give it a chance back when I actually was stupid enough to pay for online, and I just didn't really care for MGS5 that much. I never played the first Metal Gear Solid. I never played 2, 3. I heard that the first 3 were the best, especially 1 and 2. I don't know. But with Final Fantasy, I have even less experience with. I played a handful of Final Fantasy X. I had it on the PS2. Wasn't a big fan. And that was the last time I ever played a Final Fantasy game, back when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. So maybe I should give Final Fantasy a chance. But I'm going to leave the video here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. It's always fun reading them. Until next time.